Alright, so here is my first vocal sample.
This is just a demo for the texture lab.
I just recorded myself singing because I am afraid of getting into trouble with YouTube for a copyright violation. Anyway, like any sample on the Texture Lab, we can play a vocal sample chromatically on the keyboard.
This is just a demo.
But there's a couple things to keep in mind with that. The first is that if we go up even a little bit past an octave, let's say up to here, we very quickly get into hyperactive chipmunk who just swallowed gas from a helium balloon territory. If we go down more than an octave, now we get into demonic monster robot from hell territory. So point being, we have a fairly narrow melodic range to work with before things start getting goofy, but we do have some room to work with. For example, here is our neutral C again.
This is just a...
And we can go down here to a fourth in the octave below.
This is just a demo.
The fourth degree of the key that we're in, that is to say. And we can also go up an octave to here, for example.
This is just a demo for the Texture Lab.
And with both of these, I mean, we're starting to get into chipmunk territory, or we're starting to get into monster territory, but I think it still sounds pretty okay. And so we have some options here. However, the other thing to keep in mind here is that if we play the sample on a different key,
This is just a demo.
each time that we hit one of the keys, the sample is going to be re-triggered from the beginning, which doesn't sound that great if we're trying to play things melodically. However, and this brings me to the first thing that you can do, we can switch our mode from polyphonic, which the Texture Lab is in by default, to legato. And if we play in legato, well, keep in mind two things here. The first is that in legato mode, we have, I think, twice as many grains as we do in polyphonic mode. Forget what the exact number is off the top of my head. It's in the manual somewhere. But point being, we have much more density with our grains. And therefore, if we have anything granular going on with the playback of our sample, and right now I do have the granular set to the midway point, we're going to get a much denser and therefore louder sound. So something I'm going to do right off the bat here is turn down the volume so I don't blow your ears out. Now we're good to go. And the nice thing about legato mode, especially for something like a vocal, is that when we jump to another key, the playback of the sample is going to continue right where we left off. So for example,
This is
Just a demo for the
Texture Lab. This is...
and notice how the sample continued to play a little bit after I lifted my finger off the keys. You probably don't want that in this context, so let's decrease the release so that the playback immediately stops the moment I lift off, and now we can play it like this.
This is just a
Demo for the
Texture
Lab.
In other words, this allows us to melodically manipulate our original sample. Now, in this case, and in the case of any normal vocal sample, the vocals themselves are going up and down melodically. And so if we, for example, press this key here, that's taking everything and sending it down to the fifth degree of an octave below our original pitch. And so this starts to get a little bit tricky to keep everything in the same key and to make things sound nice from one shift in the melody to another as we're simultaneously pitching things up or down. So this takes a fair bit of practice and experimentation. Now, if that's too complicated, well, there's an even simpler thing you can do here, which is record a sample like this.
Speaking in a monotone into the Texture Lab. This is how you do it, like this.
Where you just take a sample of a monotone voice, and so now that we have everything in the same tone melodically, it becomes a lot easier to play it on the keyboard.
Speaking in a
Monotone into the
Texture Lab.
Speaking in a
Monotone.
into the
Texture Lab.
This is how you do it.
Like this.
And it's sort of like playing the vocal sample as if it were a vocoder or something like that. Okay, and then there are a couple of alternative ways of manipulating the sample melodically without having to do it live on the keyboard. So let's go back to our previous sample.
This is just a demo.
And for the second technique here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the sequencer mode and I'm going to put in the following notes. So our neutral C, go up to the fifth degree of the scale,
This is
go up an octave, go up another fifth, let's go back down,
this
back to C,
This,
let's drop down,
This
and then I'm just going to keep going like that.
this,
this
this is just a demo.
Okay, so now I have a mixture of those notes laid out on the sequencer, and now what we can do is go into random mode, set our random number to 1, turn down our tempo. Oh, and put our release back up, and then just let this play.
This is just a demo for the texture lab. This is just a demo for the texture lab.
This is
Just a demo for the texture lab.
So yeah, actually I ended up putting this all the way down to 40. We could slow it down even further by changing the note value. Let's try 1/8.
This is
Just a demo
for
for the texture lab. This is
just a demo
demo for the texture
texture.
lab. This is just a demo.
This gives you a way of randomizing the melody. Another thing we can do here is this. So let's delete all those notes. And then I'm going to shorten the length of the sample playback. And also turn the granular blend off so we can just hear the original sample. And get the length so that you can just hear a single word from the sample, and then record the neutral C, the middle C, onto the sequencer a bunch of times. And then we're going to go through each one of these and then adjust the position so that we get different words on different steps.
This is demo.
And so what we've basically done here is we have chopped up the vocal.
This is just demo for the texture lab.
And then from here, well, we can do a couple things. We could, for example, delete all of the notes from the pattern and then go back into here from the beginning. And instead of just doing middle C, we could start on middle C, go down.
Just
Demo for the
I also hit a fourth there. Fourths also share most of the same notes as the original key. So basically fourths and fifths are your safest bets. We could go up an octave, go back down,
text.
and down some more.
This just
demo for the
text.
And then on top of that, we could record any parameter changes we want onto the steps as well. And now we can play back any one of these individual steps. Or come up with some sort of rhythmic pattern with them. If you want more information about how I'm playing the sequencer the way I am, check out my Texture Lab Hack 4.0 video, which I'll link to below. Okay, now with that last thing I showed you, we were starting to get into what sounded almost like an arpeggio, and that brings me to the fourth thing that we can do, go into arpeggio mode. So here, once again, I'm going to play octaves and fifths, maybe fourths as well, and we're going to slow down the tempo way down. Let's go to 40 for starters.
This is just
And let's also decrease the release. Now, at the moment, we're never going to get past the word this, maybe a little bit into is, as we get into some of the higher notes here like this. But if we want to change that, well, there's a couple things we can do here. First is we can hold down a chord. Actually, we can literally just press the hold button, and then we can scan with the position knob, like this.
this is just
Demo for
the
And of course, anytime we find ourselves doing something manually with a knob, or we're just going back and forth, that is a great place for some modulation. Modulate the position. I have mod sync on, and let's set this to 1/16, which is the same note value that our arpeggio is getting played at. And then let's set the depth to about the halfway point. Let's set the position to about the halfway point, and let's see where that takes us. Let's try a different shape. It sounds like I'm singing like Drew Dairy or something. I don't know, but I actually really like that sound, and we're at least getting a little bit of variation in the syllables that are being sung. Keep in mind that in arpeggio mode, we also have control over how things get arpeggiated. So we could go down, down, up and down and up, or random. Plus a bunch of octave options, or we could just do play order. Another option we have here is, instead of modulating, let's turn this off. We could also randomize the position. And now it sounds like I'm singing Just Test It. Oh, you get the idea. So lots of options for arpeggiation there and kind of randomizing things. Okay, let me clear all this so we can start over. Okay, so if we want to get more of a kind of fragmentary sound, another thing that we can do here is we can take our granular density and turn it all the way down to 0, or close to 0, let's say 5, and then we're going to take the granular blend and bump that all the way up to maximum.
This is just a demo.
Take the size and put it down to about 40-ish, and then we're going to take the shape and we're also going to put it to about 35, somewhere around there.
This is just a demo for the...
Okay, you can start to hear it a little bit. We get this sort of like stuttering effect, and you just have to play around with the exact size and shape. It's going to differ from one sample to another. So let's just hold this down and do that.
This is just a demo for the texture lab. This is just a demo for the texture lab. This is just a demo for the texture lab.
Notice how the stutters get much bigger or smaller depending on just minute changes with the density. Let's hear that again.
This is just a demo for the texture lab. This is just a demo for...
And so now if we go back and randomize the position a bit, and we can also take the direction playback and set that to random. We can get some really cool effects that way. Now I'm back in poly mode at the moment, but we could also switch this back to arpeggio. And get a pretty cool sound that way as well. Okay, now let's go back into poly mode. Let's undo the randomization of the position. And actually, let's leave on the randomization of the playback for a moment. And the other thing I want to show you here is that with a lot of these effects that I'm showing you, you can take the granular blend and make the effect be the only thing that you're hearing, but you can also pull back the blend to something like the midway point and then actually blend together the original sample with this affected version of it.
This is just a demo for the texture lab. This is just a demo for the texture lab.
And then it becomes a more or less subtle kind of accentuation or manipulation or processing effect on the original vocal and just gives it some extra character. And that's especially something to keep in mind with this next thing I'm going to show you, which is that we can also turn the density all the way down and the size all the way down as well and get some really crunchy bit crunch effects going on. So let's turn the granular blend all the way to the right for a second. Okay, that's a bit too crunchy. The playback direction really affects this sound, so let's go back to going forwards.
This is just a demo for...
It's still really distorted, but we can at least hear the vocals again. And then once again, it becomes a matter of playing around with our size, shape, and density, and really small changes have really big effects when we get to this side of the parameters, so keep that in mind too. I'm just going to hold a note and make some subtle adjustments.
This is just a demo for the texture layer. This is just a demo for the text.
So that was all just shape.
This is just a demo for the texture layer.
Let's try manipulating the size next.
This is just a demo for the texture layer.
Sounds like I have a really sore throat now. And let's try messing around with the density a tiny bit.
This is just a demo for the texture layer. This is just a demo for the texture layer.
So yeah, that sort of like removes or accentuates the effect. And since we're in this place where really small knob adjustments make a really big difference, this is another great place to modulate. For example, let's try modulating our density a little bit.
This is just a demo for the texture layer.
And different shapes of the modulation have different effects.
This is just a demo for the texture layer. This is just a demo for the texture layer. This is just a demo for the texture layer. This is just a demo for the...
And we can have a second modulator going on at the same time. Let's try size this time.
This is just a demo for the texture layer. This is just a demo for the texture layer. This is just a demo for the texture layer. This is just a demo.
It's starting to become a bit of an extreme effect here, but then remember, we can just turn the blend back to the midway point and blend it together with the original sample.
This is just a demo for the texture layer.
So in this case, we're just adding kind of a layer of grittiness to the original vocal.
This is just a demo for the texture layer.
All right, let me undo all of that and show you another effect that we can blend in with our sample, which is this. So this time I'm going to put the granular blend all the way up for the moment, and then if we turn our density all the way up,
this is just a demo for the texture.
We get what sounds almost like a chorus or flanger effect, and that is because when the density is set to the midway point, that's actually as dense as we can get with the number of grains that we're playing at any given time. If we go beyond the midway point, then what the Texture Lab basically is doing is some detuning. Again, there's details about this in the manual, but point being, when we max out the value, we're actually detuning our sample. And if we go to legato mode, well, remember, since we have more grains, we're also going to have more grains getting detuned when we start going into detune territory.
This is just a demo for the...
And so that's going to accentuate that chorus or flanger effect as well. Another thing we can do here is we can turn up the diffusion.
This is just a demo for the texture layer.
And then we can also mess around with the speed just a little bit. Let's turn it down to like negative, 15, let's say.
This is just a demo for the texture layer.
And then we're further accentuating that effect because basically what we're doing here is on the dry side of the sample.
This is just a demo for...
We're pitched down a little bit, and then over here on the granular side, we're pitched at the same level.
This is just a demo.
And if we blend those two things together,
this is just a demo for the texture layer.
We get even more of a chorus effect. Another thing we can do with the speed is we can turn it all the way in one direction, turn our pitch in the opposite direction as far as it goes. And then we'll get some pretty extreme bifurcation of the granular side and the dry side. That is way too extreme, so let's tone it down a bit, and instead of going all the way up to 24, let's go to 12, so 1 octave up. And then over here, instead of 63, let's go to 47, which is an octave down.
This is just a demo for the texture.
So that's a bit more manageable. You can also do this vice versa, taking the pitch knob and going all the way down with that, and then taking our speed knob and going all the way up with that.
This is just a demo.
Which again is a bit too extreme, so let's turn it down to -12. And then here, for an octave up, we want, I'm pretty sure, 21.
This is just a demo.
And then let's go up an octave on the keyboard.
This is just a demo for the texture.
And so now on the dry side,
This is just a demo for the texture.
we're going up into chipmunk territory, and on the granular side, we're at the original pitch, and let's make the density more neutral here.
This is just a demo for the texture. This is just a
Now we can blend together these 2 octaves, and then we can apply any of the tricks that we looked at previously. So for example, we can turn the density way down.
This is just for the This is just a demo for the texture.
This is just a demo for the texture. This is just a
Demo for the texture. This is just a demo for the texture.
And we can do this in the opposite direction as well, turning the pitch up to 12 and turning the speed down to -48 and going back down an octave.
This is just a
And you get the idea. Another classic thing that we can do with a vocal sample is to reverse it, which always sounds cool by itself. And we can do this with just a straight vocal like this, or with our granularized vocal blended into it as well. But keep in mind that we also have a number of other options besides just going backwards. For example, we can go forward and backwards.
texture lab. Texture
And get some cool effects that way as well. Okay, let's undo all of that, and I'm getting kind of sick of that sample, so here's another one I recorded.
This is another demonstration. This is another demonstration of the texture lab.
And for this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the infinity reverb, crank it way up. Let's turn off the shimmer, at least for now.
This is another demonstration of the texture lab.
So with the infinity reverb, we can get some really spaced out and ethereal sounds, and we can accentuate this further by turning up the granular blend, turning up the density, turning up the diffusion, and actually let's leave it there for a second, see what that sounds like.
This is another demonstration of the texture lab.
And here, if we want to, we can also slow things down.
This is another
Try changing the size a little bit here, go down to the midway point, play around with the shape a little bit. getting into sort of a celestial chorus here. If we want to get things even weirder, we can change the playback direction to reverse. And if we want to actually play something like that on the keyboard, the way we would a normal instrument, here's the last thing I'm going to show you. So let's undo everything again. And actually, let's go back to our original sample.
This is just a demo for the...
And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to try to just isolate that word demo. So function, and then one of the octave keys for the start of the sample.
It's just a demo for the texture.
And now let's take care of the end of the sample.
Demo for the texture. Demo for the demo for the demo for demo for demo 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 demo
That's kind of cool by itself, but we can also just play around with the sound now. So let's try turning the speed down. Granular blend all the way up. Let's randomize the playback. The position of the playback, I should say. Try also randomizing the direction. Go back to setting our reverb to infinity. Density up. We can turn the reverb all the way off, turn our density all the way down, and get back into more fragmentary territory. Once again, we could also just play this in arpeggio mode. Alright, that's all I got. Bye for now.